In Germany, pro-Palestinian demonstrators marched with Palestinian flags and chanted slogans in the streets of Berlin. The police report 5,000 protesters took place in the rally. They took part in the rally. Well, for more on this, I'm being joined now on the line from London by the author and international affairs analyst, Dr. Marek Laskiewicz.
Good evening.
Good evening, Dr. Marek. Now, could you bring us up to date on the situation in the Middle East, especially as it affects what is happening in the UK?
Well, in the UK, obviously, key point a time back was that Palestine will be recognized, despite the fact that there has been this agreement. There are still marches in favor of Palestine, because people are still concerned, until everything works out well, that there in fact will be no further progress, I think, after the hostages are returned. I think this is what is the key fear, not only, of course, in London, but in Gaza, but simultaneously, of course, there are Israelis who had that counter-protest on the basis that there should be less vitriolic attacks on Israel, although, of course, Israel has significantly made very unpleasant actions in Gaza.
Now, come to think of it, to what extent are the protesters on the same page with the UK government concerning the situation in the Middle East?
No, they're more extreme than the UK government, in the sense that I think they would see a lot more action now. There is, of course, the whole business that after the exchange, that Israel, and this is what they want, should withdraw out of Palestine, and that on top of that, a Palestinian state should be set up. These are further points which are not at present agreed upon, and this which is motivating the protesters.
And I'm also wondering, the Jewish community in the United Kingdom at the moment, how are they faring? Because apparently the sentiment seems to be stacked against Israel at the moment.
Well, indeed, it is stacked against Israel. The Jewish community has, of course, seen a fair amount of hostility towards them as a result of Israel's actions. It is not, however, a constant threat. It is not as if it's anything like what's happening on the West Bank in Palestine by the Israelis. There are no constant physical attacks or anything like that on the Jewish community. And so from that point of view, it is simply a problem for them to deal with. It should be noted, however, that, of course, within the Jewish communities, there are indeed people who, whilst everyone, of course, welcomes the return of the hostages, who also would not be averse to more moves being made to placate the situation with respect to the Palestinians. On the whole, one can say that the Jews abroad are not as concerned to see the non-existence ever of a Palestinian state. Nevertheless, owing to Israeli actions, they do face a more unpleasant time than usual.
And over in Israel, the expectations are rather high that the hostages will be released very soon. You know, the protesters at the hostage square being very optimistic that their kinsmen who are held hostage in Gaza will be regaining freedom soon enough. But then, how soon are we expecting these hostages to regain their freedom?
It would appear to be all taking place on Monday. It would appear that both sides, because the Israelis, of course, preparing to release detained Palestinian prisoners, that both sides are preparing to do everything on Monday. That is the agreement, that is what is seemingly being prepared. It has to be said, moreover, that Hamas has promised this time not to make such a political PR exercise out of it as they did those years before. Even so, it will be a very, very big moment, and in its way will be a very significant moment for the Middle East.
Now, we also understand that the Palestinians have requested for some specific prisoners to be released, and that's including Marwan Barghouti. Israel has so far not agreed to those conditions. So would that in any way impede the return of the Israeli prisoners in return?
As far as one can tell, no. However, it's a guarded no, because the real problem is we've still got 48 hours to go, and anything can happen in those 48 hours which would upset all this arrangement. Please note, it's on very delicate grounds. If, for example, there was a problem on the West Bank, it might go wrong. If, for example, some rogue Hamas fighters decided to do something, it would go wrong. If, for example, the right-wingers in Israel decided that they were so against the deal that it could not go through, it could still go wrong. And here comes the importance of your point, the Palestinians aren't getting exactly what they want. And this is, if you like, not a good sign, because the prisoner you mentioned actually is very important for them. He's seen as a future potential leader of the Palestinian state, which is, of course, precisely why Israel does not want to release him. And that, in turn, has a deadly implication, that it shows that Netanyahu is quite serious when he says there will never be a Palestinian state. Of course, the master plan that maybe Donald Trump has, but certainly the supporters of this on the Arab side, is that the Likud regime with its far-right allies won't last forever, and therefore it won't be the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu who changes his mind, that he simply eventually loses power, whereupon a Palestinian state is possible. However, that is very much a supposition, and what is clear as we stand is that this particular point you've noted, it's a minor point you might think, is actually important. The implication is that there's no Palestinian state and that there will be no huge peace deal.
And talking about the peace deal, I mean, there seems to be an atmosphere of uneasy calm as, lots of Palestinians make their way back to Gaza, a place that's in ruins at the moment. But some would be thinking that, with the return of Palestinians back to Gaza in their numbers, is there any possibility, even though remote, that some elements of Hamas might want to once again kickstart some form of violence, in a way violating the uneasy truce that is in place at the moment?
Well, if they did, it would be rogue elements, because actually Hamas, and this it will appear, I predict soon, is going to be claiming this as a victory. You see, the central problem is, although many Gazans died, although Gaza has been reduced to rubble for no discernible reason, because Hamas wasn't in many of those houses, and yet they've been destroyed. I mean, it looks like a moonscape at present, Gaza. Although all this has happened, the fact of the matter is that America, with its most pro-Israeli, one of the most pro-Israeli presidents ever, has agreed in principle to a Palestinian state. Not only that, Hamas has survived on the basis that it's not dismantled. There's no easy vision of it being disarming itself in the near future. And on top of everything else, the Gazans are returning. Sure, the place looks like a moonscape, but they haven't been expelled. There hasn't been any ethnic cleansing. Israel, from this point of view, really has gained extraordinarily little for a huge, huge loss of its image. It's unbelievable. Israel has been accused of genocide and has committed actions which may be thought unthinkable. And all for what? It's true that Gaza has been ruined. People can rebuild. I mean, Gaza City was ruined, but Warsaw was ruined just the same way by the Germans, house by house. Go there, and it's been rebuilt. And the same thing here. So I don't think they're going to be Hamas attacks initially, because, to be honest, they've got an enormous victory, if they know how to use it in PR terms. And I suspect that's exactly what they're going to do. So no, I don't expect any immediate Hamas actions on the military side, but on the diplomatic and PR side, yes. And they are just as deadly in their way as military ones.
Now, looking into the future, there is also the proviso that whatever Palestinian state is in the works, the condition would be that Hamas would not be part of the Palestinian state in the future, the Palestinian state agreed upon in principle. To what extent then is the United States and probably other stakeholders ready to enforce the non-participation of Hamas in a future Palestinian state?
Yeah, that is a very key point, and the answer goes as follows. It would appear that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Israelis like Hamas have their own, if you like, programs, and it's unlikely that they're going to fully agree to the 20-point plan. And here we're now discussing Hamas. It's unclear how they will be disarmed. It's also been made quite clear by Hamas itself it expects to play some part. And here comes the first significant point where Hamas has flexed its muscles, I think has shown that it still has something to say. It has refused Tony Blair. Now, that's an interesting one, isn't it? Tony Blair has been suggested by the American president, and here's Hamas saying it doesn't want him. And if he doesn't make it, if he's not accepted, then Hamas will have shown that it has still got power. And moreover, just to add to it, it therefore implies it will play some sort of part, albeit not a major one. So I'm afraid it's by no means clear that that part of the plan will go ahead in the form that is envisaged.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Marek Laskiewicz, for joining us on The World. That was our guest on the line from London, author and international affairs analyst, Dr. Marek Laskiewicz.